The Native Artists Alliance is creating an equitable statewide space for dialogue, experimental practice, and community engaged work that contributes to new ideas and an understanding of how art mediums might be translated and transformed by Native knowledge, traditions, aesthetics, performance, and land use systems. Here with me tonight is my friend and I would say collaborator of also another arts organization is Crystal Wabnum. And I like to have people introduce themselves to kind of say who they are and what they do in life. So stay tuned for that. And just to kind of fill in everybody about tonight's episode, this evening's episode is really about something that we don't talk about enough. We are so appreciative as Native communities, Native nations, to have phenomenal Native artists that bring so many things to our communities: representation, healing, other dynamics. But given the new age of everything and working, we like to say settler art systems, we often forget about the people that are behind the scenes, the people creating the opportunities, the people that write the grants, the people that cross promote across every platform. And so this evening is about those people, and they are called Native art professionals. These are the people that keep track of the data. They are the people that are, I guess, behind the screens on their computers. They're the ones that, they keep the fire going, so to speak. And so much like everything else that we do in our communities. And so this episode is really a homage to that there's been every generation of Native artist professionals. I come from a generation of that. My Auntie Juanita used to be a Native art curator as well as an organizer, working in the Minnesota area community and regional community and national. And so I know that in watching her and her work, there have been many artists and other people that have been inspired by the work that she does, and she did, and she continues to do. And without her commitment to our people and to our varying traditional art forms and contemporary art forms, many people, I just had a well-known artist, Nora Naranjo Morris, comment that without her work, she wouldn't have been chosen for a piece in Washington, D.C. And so these are the people that we need to pay close attention to, but also in bringing in the next generation of Native artist professionals so that we have more representation by Native artists, but also more representation in the back of the house, more representation for the people that push our art through, that push more representation through. So with that being said, to this evening, I asked Crystal, who is with First Peoples Fund, to kind of talk about that, talk about, what it means to be a Native artist professional, and talk about the good and some of the struggles, and basically just the work that they do at First Peoples Fund too. So, and before we go into Crystal, I wanted to open up with the first question. This is the Artist Talks and Tea, and that means that we drink tea and we talk about art. And so this evening, I am drinking an iced tea because it's relatively cool today, but I'm always full on addicted to some iced tea during the summer. So this is the tea that I'm drinking tonight. It's a Celestial iced tea. I like this brand just because it's pretty smooth and it brews in 5 minutes, which is easier than putting leaves in a thing and having sun tea and letting them soak all night. So that's my drink this evening. And Crystal, what are you drinking this evening?
So I am drinking the wild blueberry tea that y'all shipped to me. Full disclosure, Gracie gave me like full reign to grab whatever kind of drink or tea that I wanted. And I was like, there was a package that was sent to my home specifically for this artist talk. So yeah, I'm going to drink that bomb blueberry wild tea in this really glorious like cup and steeper. So like I am that one who did the steeping and I'm drinking the hot beverage in the summer. But it's been really mild today. And it came with the maple sugar, like the heart-shaped maple sugar. Where did these come from? Super
I
curious.
don't know. Pamela got these somewhere and she seems to always have a lot of those. I don't even think I've actually had one of those. So you're very lucky.
They're super
Is
yummy.
is there anything like any connection to tea? Was there anything, drinking tea when you're little, or just even we were just talking about, your master's program was tea. Was there any significance to tea in your life?
I would say, one, I'm like all about the bevies, like all the time. At any given point during the workday, I'll probably have like 3 or 4 different kinds of bevies at my table because I just like to be hella hydrated. I like to be super hydrated. And then as far as like my connection to tea, I remember like very fondly in my household growing up, we would make sun teas during the summer. And I inherited my grandma's pickle jar when she passed away, but it's like just like one of those big old jars that like you get full of like pickles and you just like shove it with a bunch of Lipton and then put it outside all day. And then it's just like this delicious, yummy. And when I'm like making my tea, I didn't realize just how much I kind of cherished this jar until somebody at my former workplace was like, I was carrying it around on my hip like it was baby. They're like, "Oh, you've got your little baby pickle jar." And I'm like, "Yeah, I do because my grandma gave me this jar and she's passed."
Oh, oh, that's so cool. Yeah, and I don't think you can really find that size of pickle jar anymore. I think they're like a little bit smaller than they originally were, or I don't know. I don't know. I could be wrong. And I hope I get corrected and they're saying actually these pickle jars are somewhere. So you could still find them, but I just got a big pickle jar and it wasn't as big as I maybe like when you're younger, things are a lot bigger in your mind. Cause
It's like
every time yeah,
shrunk.
because then every time I look for a pickle jar, I'm like, these seem really small. They don't make them how they used to, but maybe it's because I was small at the time. So I'm
Legit.
envious. I'm glad. Yeah, I'm glad that you got your pickle jar. Well, thank you for sharing that. And like I said, I really like it when people introduce themselves because I feel like it's always like so scripted when you're reading off a long bio and so and I could miss some things too. And so just to kick it off, like who is Crystal? What does Crystal do?
Mhm.
And I know, like I said before, you work with First People's Fund, and there are a few opportunities that are coming up now that we'd love to hear about, so we can promote more Native art. So I'll let you take it away.
Awesome. Thanks, Gracie. So I'm Crystal Wabnum, and I am coming to you live and direct from the Twin Cities on Dakota lands. And originally, I'm from Topeka, Kansas. I was born and raised just 20 minutes south of the Prairie Band Potawatomi Res, which is where my dad's from, and then 4 hours north of Stillwell, Oklahoma, where my mom's from. And so, just a little tiny snapshot of me. I moved up here. When did I move up here? About 2016 for grad school to go to the School of Public Health, and just since stayed. One, because the land is beautiful, and two, I've gotten older. It takes a lot of energy to move around so much, but I'm a mover. I'm a mover, in more ways than one. And so yeah, I'm still here in the Twin Cities. And who am I? What do I do? What do I do? So employment wise, like I have the privilege and honor to be a program manager of community development at First Peoples Fund, which is headquartered in Rapid City, South Dakota. Our mission is to, and I'm going to read it, is to honor and support the collective spirit of First Peoples artists and culture bearers. Our work recognizes the power of art and culture to bring about positive change in Native communities, beginning with individual artists and their families. And we do that in a multitude of ways, kind of recognizing that that support at all levels really enlivens artists, families, and entire communities. And so we have programs that are aimed at uplifting individual artists who are emerging, and also artists who are like super established and are recognized as pretty much like lifelong culture bearers of their tribal communities. And the program that I get to steward is called the Native Arts Ecology Building Program. And it's one of our only organizational regranting programs. So our other grants are geared towards supporting individuals, and the NAB is geared towards supporting the Native Arts Ecology, which is kind of jargony, right? But the idea is that on the macro level, if we support organizations such as Native Community Development Financial Institutions and Native arts organizations that have existing programs that serve to bolster the arts community in some way, like the Native arts community in some way, that we can amplify the work that they're already doing by providing technical assistance to them so that they can reach more Native artists and culture bearers through their networks. And so that's kind of looking at supporting Native artists and culture bearers on like a macro level. And so I'm lucky enough to be one of two community development program managers at First Peoples Fund. We recently hired on a second. So yeah, our community development program is in the process of being rebolstered, redeveloped, kind of re-energized. And I'm just super excited to be a part of that.
And then I notice, the whole point of this, and I guess like just for future things, is that we want to, as MNAA, we want to make sure that there's always collaboration in everything that we do, and that it can't just be one organization that has to do everything, and that we work together regionally and nationally. And the big dream is nationally. And I know First Peoples Fund does that. And so we are just so happy to have this collaboration with First Peoples Fund. So I know there's been a few opportunities as far as grants that are currently out yet. Can you speak to those?
Sure, absolutely. Thanks for kicking the can over my way. So our fellowships program, our program manager for fellowships is a wonderful colleague named Rachel Nez. And they have recently extended the deadline to apply for the Artists in Business Leadership Fellowship, as well as the Cultural Capital Fellowship. And that deadline is, I believe it's this coming, not tomorrow, but a week from tomorrow, August 5th. And the two fellowships are very similar, but different in that the Cultural Capital Fellowship is really aimed at supporting individual artists that kind of work at a community level, so that their practice, it's really like a project grant. And so their practice is kind of community focused. And then the Artist and Business Leadership Fellowship is really about supporting emerging artists in kind of networking them into existing markets, new markets, providing peer-to-peer mentorship. Basically, both fellowships kind of establish a cohort and build knowledge and training alongside other fellows that are in their same program. And then something that we are bringing back into the fold as of 2023, and I'm super excited about it, is our grantee partner convening, which it basically kind of brings together all of our grantee partners. So like the individual fellows, as well as our organizational partners funded through NAB, to like a 2 to 3 day convening where it's basically like a cross-pollinator, like meet and greet and networking and, getting to build relationships with one another and cross-pollinate. And I've never been a part of it, but I've heard that it's really beneficial to the field, both organizationally, like the organizations that NAB has funded in the past have like spoken really well to the opportunity to connect with other artists and other organizations doing similar work, but in different regions. Because the lay of the land is not completely the same everywhere. There's regional variations, community differences. And so having a place to come and share strengths and challenges and to build is kind of where it's at. And that'll be happening, I believe, March 2023. So stay tuned.
Well, that's cool. Well, those are really good opportunities. And I hope our listeners on MNAA Facebook, as well as thepowwows.com, will seek these opportunities. I think they're really well. I've seen many successful people come out of these programs. And so please, please, please apply. So I heard you talk about, going for your master's, come to Minnesota, and it was for public health. And now you're working in the Native arts field. What made you want to work in Native arts?
Yeah, that's a really great question. So during the pandemic, I was unemployed and was just doing art full time. And when I say just doing art, it wasn't, it was like, it's never just doing art. There's always like some kind of backstory there. And I love talking with other like makers and artists about what their backstory is. And so for that particular time in my life, the backstory was like, really taking a deliberate pause to do like a lot of healing work internally, spiritually, emotionally. Because a part of my reality, my lived experience is I don't think it's unique to Native people, but is having complex PTSD. And so the pandemic really like triggered a lot of that within me. And I found it really difficult just to do the basic things and work and all of those things. So art and beadwork at the time, like really kind of came into the fold, and I just like leaned in really heavily into it and was doing it like full time for almost pretty much 2 years. And it was kind of, I like think back to it and I really miss it. Like I miss it dearly, and I still do beadwork. I still like engage in making whenever I can, but not in the way that I did during those years of 2020, 2021. So, and then the other part of your question was like, how to go from that to First Peoples Fund. So in the process of like making, one of the things that I did was got to like really lean into like nurturing relationships that I have with like my kin people throughout the region. And so one of those people is a Lakota woman who has been kind of like a sister, friend, and a mentor for a good portion of my adult life. And so I was like beadworking at her house, staying there for a couple of weeks and just being full-fledged auntie mode, just loving it, taking the kids to school and picking them up and making food and just being in that mode. And she was like, "Oh my gosh, it'd be so great if you moved here and worked here." And I was like, "Ah, that's so funny. Like I got a place. I feel good. I love my roommate. I love my life in Minneapolis." And but she kind of planted this seed where I was like, like what's around these parts, you know? And she had a friend who worked at First Peoples Fund, and she was like, "This seems like a really great organization that's super values aligned and in the work that they do, and they're doing good work for the people." And so that's kind of how the organization was framed to me. And honestly, before October 2021, like I hadn't heard of First Peoples Fund before. And so yeah, I met some of their staff people, and they were like, "We have these opportunities, and yeah, let's see if your skills like work with what we need." And so it's been I don't have a ton of professional experience in the arts world. And I was really upfront about it. Like, I was like, they're like, "What kind of community development experience do you have?" And I was like, nothing that would be like categorically in community development, but as a person who's done community work and been an organizer, electoral organizing, campaign issue organizing, membership base building, a grants manager for like federal, state, and community foundational grants, those kinds of things, managing tribally run programs. I have a ton of experiences that like are transferable. And so it was super important to me to connect with an organization that was doing work with values at the forefront. And I think more than anything else, that's kind of my compass. I approached the work with that compass, and was pretty bought out of engaging in full-time employment until I found an organization whose values were in line with mine. And so yeah, that's kind of how I came into the fold. And yeah, I'm still fairly new at the organization. I just celebrated 6 months with First Peoples Fund.
Yeah, but I feel like when we initially talked about this, I feel like public health, and community they're like the same thing for the arts. For our traditional way and how we used to practice, it was totally traditional arts. And I just like heard this new term the last few weeks called settler art, because I think we like to kind of use the terms westernized art or Western art, and those are different concepts. And I just heard this new term of settler art. Like, yeah, it is completely different because we didn't necessarily have galleries at all. The art of Turtle Island was mostly grounded in healing and passing on traditions and being around community and shaping and growing together as a people. And so I feel like you were meant to be in it, and I hope you stay in it too, because we need people. We need more Native artist professionals, and especially those that have their they do their own artwork, because then all of the value and the time that is spent on just like one beadwork item, and how if you value it and you can empathize with it, then making sure that more Native artists, their time is valued, and seen for, really what it is. I can't tell you how many times I've, talked to relatives about pricing their stuff, or, their things appropriately, because they'll say, well, I have this and I'm just gonna sell it for like $10 or like $20. And I'm like, no, like,
So much money that's still
I
on the
know
table.
that's like so much time. You're like giving it away. So I think the fact that you do your own art, says a lot, because I can't say how many times I've even met, Native people, and they're like, yeah, I just do beadwork, or I just do this. I'm like, that's our art. You are a cultural bearer. You are in your community. You have a lot to say still. So I think you have a lot going on for you. So with that being said, straight out of the gate, how, now that your feet are fully submerged, how important is it to have Native arts professionals?
Yeah, I think it's in the scheme of health, in the scheme of philanthropy, in the scheme of putting food on the table of our families, of like Native families. It's like super important because we're basically levers in the machine, right? So I don't think Lori Poirier, our CEO, would like to think of us as being a philanthropic vehicle. And we're so much more than that. We're really in the trenches and alongside our artists and culture bearers and communities, providing assistance and being champions of artists and culture bearers. But the field is like the grant program that I manage is essentially like being we're an intermediary. So just as one example of how it's important to have Native arts professionals in the work who also have like a critical analysis of capitalism and the systems and white supremacy, and are rooted in community values, Native values, is, one of the kind of challenges is, working with potential partners. And like there's a lot of in philanthropy right now, there's a lot of kind of shifting around, like the racial reckoning of like 2020 that was long overdue. And so like, and then of course, like before that, Edgar Villanueva's book that came out that was really like amplified and put words to decolonizing wealth and decolonizing philanthropy and like money as medicine. And so philanthropy knows now, they have like it in their forefront that like, okay, we are a part of the problem. How are we gonna like be a part of the solution? And so they still have the same people, the same white dudes, white women, running their organizations and trying to, shift funding into the communities that folks like First Peoples Fund works alongside. And it's critical that we have people who are in those spaces, or in those like very white, very like dominant spaces, to be like, yo, like this is what the funding scheme looks like in our communities, and your money is not making it to our communities. And like let's help like shift that, right? And I'm not like, there's much more eloquent ways to say this, but people like Lori Poirier have been like instrumental in really shifting philanthropy's gears, and making it such that we, where am I going? I just lost it. It was just right there, and it was like.
I do that. So everybody that knows me, I talk a lot, but I'm an introvert, and then I have like where I'm going, and then I just kind of like stop sometimes. So I know exactly how that is.
You're
But
really
I liked what you were saying, because I think before this I was like sending these articles to you about the our arts disparities in our communities and who's really holding the power. And so some of the things that I wanted to share was that white people hold 75% of curatorial, artistic, choreography positions at arts organizations, which that's a lot. We're saying nationally 75% of our curators are not are white people. And the other part of it is when people of color are in these positions, arts organizations will improve their ability to create bridges across different communities and audiences. I think that, there's like a difference between museums and galleries and nonprofits, but we all are a bridge for our artists, and that brings more visibility for different audiences to hear these varying narratives. So I feel like that says a lot to what's happening, but I feel like there's also, and I can't find it, I was like trying to hurry up and find the statistics, but I think what it was 80% of the grants, the grantees in Minnesota are not people of color. In fact, that they're white artists. And so and I think it was 75-80, but it was still a high number. And I remember hearing this statistic in 2015. This was like during the Standing Rock era. And I was at the Walker and we were talking about this, and a lovely, lovely artist who's my friend said that in her presentation. And I thought, that's really crazy. That speaks volumes. So organizations like First People's Fund that gives these opportunities for funding helps artists, our native artists, a lot to kind of get in there to have more support, because I can't stress enough that we have like limited people that do digital art, or even that that are in the native arts field, just because of access and economy, that money is spent elsewhere, not on this equipment, not on the software. And so, and I can talk all day about that, how those are disparities that affect our communities. So it's like no wonder that First People's Fund sees this and wants to help our people in this way. And so since you've been doing your job for now 6 months and working in the arts field, did you ever see yourself working in this field before, or is it like one of the last things you would have thought, or is it kind of like serendipitous?
Those are great questions. I think it's definitely serendipitous. I think the older I get, the more comfortable I am with just like pursuing the things that feel right and are in alignment with my values and the goals that I have, like personally, emotionally, spiritually, professionally. And community development seems like a really good fit, right? It's like social justice. I identified as an organizer, an activist for a long time. And one thing that I think it's really easy to get sucked into in that is like just fighting the fight all the time. And I think the community development kind of frame and field is just so generative, it feels like to me. And I know the struggle exists wherever we are because of the nature of who we are, and being born into indigeneity, and that being cultural and political status, and then also being political beings at that. So the struggle is pretty much within us everywhere we go. But I feel like community development has been a really good fit for this phase in my life, to just like to build and to really drive, to be in the driver's seat of developing a programmatic approach that has like, I think there's some real opportunity with it. And so yeah, it is definitely serendipitous. And I don't, so so just as like a vignette to like share a little bit about how in alignment I feel like I am in working with First Peoples Fund. So through the NAB grant, the Native Arts Ecology Building Grant, this past year we funded a group called Groundwater Arts. And the culmination of that partnership resulted in like a 5 day long kind of like workshopping with like local Lakota youth in Kyle, South Dakota. And then the result of that was like a 2 day long kind of performance driven event called Celebrating Native Joy. And that was theatrical, and kind of the art director for that was Tara Moses, who is like wonderful, super fabulous. And we really look forward to working with her again in our program. But I think what happened was I was driving from Rapid to support the group in Kyle at the Oglala Lakota Art Space, which is a program of First Peoples Fund. I can talk more about that later, but this was on the day that SCOTUS had overturned Roe versus Wade. And I remember like driving and like crying and just like listening to Rage Against the Machine. Like I'm censoring myself right now because I'm like cussing profanity. I'm not going to do it. But like the really specific Rage Against the Machine's song that is like, F you can't, I won't do what you tell me. And I was just like singing it and crying it. And then I got to the Oglala Lakota Art Space, and our Groundwater Arts crew was there. And they're Native actors and performers from all over the country. And they're like, Crystal, how's it going? And I was like, do you see my face? Do you see how swollen? Like, And they're like, yeah, it's some shh. And I was like, yeah, it really is. And I just like flew on the floor and started writhing around, and just like having this somatic experience of like, this is how terrible this news about like the SCOTUS decision is. And I was alongside the right people at the right time who were like, yeah, you're one of us. You're one of us. And like just being able to bring one's full self to the table feels really, really good. It feels really stinking good. So it's definitely a place where I feel like the inner child in me is seen, and it feels like welcomed and supported. So yeah.
Oh, well, I like that, because I think that's like a great answer, because it's like serendipitous when you find something, if you just keep going and you find your path. It's great to have those reconfirmations of, being there at the right time, at the right place, and then finding the right people that you just click with. I think that's great. So audience, people at the MNAA Facebook page and people at the powwows.com Facebook page, we at the end of our program, we are going to it'll be your time to ask questions. If you have any questions for Crystal or anything about Native Arts Professional, just you can go ahead, pop them in the comments, and our great Oz behind the curtains tonight is once again Ashley Fairbanks will be sharing them with us. So if you have any questions or comments, just put them in the put them in your comments on the Facebook page. And so for my next question, and I like, this is kind of like a me question. It was kind of like coming from me, because I felt this way right when I started to work in the arts field. And so my next question was, what are some of the things that you found intimidating
Ooh.
about your new position?
Oh, what was intimidating? I think the sheer amount of work to be done, honestly. The sheer amount of work to be done. It's funny when I first started at First Peoples, I think that was just around the time that the Echo Hawk allegations came to light. And I remember having like huddles around what the organization's response was going to be. And we were talking about like what does an arts emergency look like? Right. And it's like, okay, well, how many emergencies are there in the art field? Well, something like that's like probably one of them. You know, there are quite a few that I can think of. And so I feel like just the sheer amount of work to move forward on everyone's plate is like enormous. And also there's unpredictability that comes up with being within a Native arts organization, and just all of the inquiries to field, and then kind of emerging issues that arise that kind of require most hands on deck. I think the sheer workload of it was overwhelming. Not at first, because I feel like I was kind of buffered from it for a little bit, but it's like it can be as much as you want it to be, really. So but it's also like something that makes it so fantastic is that there's so many different opportunities and directions to really like put the energy forward into. So yeah, I think that'll be my
Your final answer.
it.
Yeah, I think the other part of it is with like finding intimidating is just kind of the legacy of other people too that have, done this for a long time, that have done this before. And I'm always like the type of person where, obviously my aunt was a curator and arts organizer before. And that's kind of like some pretty hefty shoes to walk in, because I feel like it's not necessary like the sense of being an alumni. It's more or less like, well, what are you going to do with your time? What are you gonna, what type of changes? I think the other part of it, along with changes, is the deconstruction of it. I feel like deconstructing what westernized art is, and trying to put forth what native art is kind of hard, because you have like some people that really want to like they have like this stronghold of what they think it is, and they want to cling to it, and that is sometimes gatekeeping. That is sometimes like limiting others to be at the table, because it's more about capitalism to them rather than community coming forward and together. So I feel like that those are the two intimidating things that I would say for me, just because it's like you always want to bring forth the true essence of what Native arts was here, but then you're also like grappling with other things too. And it is, art can be healing, but in healing things look ugly, and with what you brought up, with that incident, it was an arts crisis, because people's past. I know I follow a TikTok account, and they talk about, the true people behind, the arts masks, which is like Salvador Dali and Pablo Picasso, and people that were really problematic and really did some horrible things, but yet their art was important. What they had to say was important. And so it kind of rose to the top, and they weren't authentic. They were, they were kind of they're kind of in places where they shouldn't have been, or even around people that they shouldn't have been, like vulnerability. And when that happens, I didn't see any of like the westernize our settler art people, saying, hey, we have a problem here. Pablo Picasso did this, or Salvador Dali did this. It was never like about ethics or about supporting people with a great vision. It was about supporting how much money they would make, even though they're really good at, creating, and they're like visionaries in their own right. And so I think that's like the cool thing about Native arts, is that we all have different teachings, and those teachings still tether us to, to the land, and tether us to our community, in essence. And stuff like that shouldn't happen, because if you keep promoting these problematic artists, then they go on to more vulnerable people, right? And so I feel you when you said that. So my next question is, what are some of the things that you found easy or fun about your job, like that you didn't think was going to be easy at first, but then it turned out to be easy?
That's more fun. Let's see. I think I didn't anticipate like being in a position of recruiting my team, but I kind of am finding myself being and it's really just it was really just a matter of networking. So we're definitely, as an organization, in a building phase, and it's pretty incredible to be building the plane as you're flying it, so they say. And it's also like a lot of work, but the fun part of it for me has been like considering who would be a really great colleague to work alongside in community development and on the programs team. And so we were recruiting for my counterpart. And I was like, I know somebody in community development already. Like, he's got loads more experience than I do in the field. And I think he would be a really great cultural fit. And he's just like a super bomb pleasant person to be around. And so he went through the process and was hired. And so and then I'm also like kind of in recruitment mode for our Native Artist Professional Development Program Manager. And I'm just like super excited about having someone new on our team that can take the program to the next level. And so that's a part of the work that I didn't anticipate kind of steering and driving, but it's been a lot of fun. It's been a lot of fun to kind of envision the kind of team that would really bring their A game to the work.
Yeah, and I think that would be great. I mean, I wish we had a ton of funding to bring on more people, because essentially you're like building the Power Rangers or building the Avengers of the arts. So you have your Hulk or She-Hulk. And it's nice because I feel like that's the cool thing. You're making new coworkers, and you're working together, and everybody has like this common effort, that benefits the whole economy, like the straight up economy of our communities. It's, that's like the great thing about it. Like when you were talking about Kyle, South Dakota, I'm like, yeah, I've been to Potato Creek, I've been to Kyle, I've been all over there, and just hearing that there was something there, which was there before, pre-colonization, and that it's still emerging, it's still flourishing, and that there's bringing in just amazing artists from all over the place. I feel like that's the cool thing about it. Have you ever witnessed that there's a limited have you witnessed that there's a limitation on Native people in your job field?
Whew, you know what? Because I haven't been in the arts field for long, I don't have a lot of experience to draw from in answering that question, but I will say that we're currently we're recruiting for an executive position, our VP of programs. And I'm sure there are folks that are qualified for it. And being qualified for a position doesn't necessarily mean that you have the spirit that is a good match for the team and the organization and the artists and culture bearers that we work with, and then the folks that we haven't yet worked with, but we want to. And so yeah, I can't answer that question. I just know that I think that First People's Fund is a pretty special place, and it takes a lot of heart, a lot of energy, and a certain amount of kind of generosity of spirit to do the work well. And I don't know how that matches up to, all of the Western qualifications. So
yeah, and I think in one of those articles I shared with you, there was a part about education, and that it's really that most of these jobs want 2 to 4 years of educational experience, and obviously we have some disparities with education for Native people, and so yeah, so I think even with that being said, I feel like education is one of those things. But I don't know. I guess for me, my my boss is super cool about deconstructing what education means, because we also have to deconstruct what arts mean, right? When we're saying, some people say, yes, I pursued my MFA in studio arts and blah, 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 and they have a certification for that. We also like to say there's a mastery, like that you've learned to do beadwork from somebody or you're self-taught, and that's years and years of learning that medium, and that is valuable and that is of value. And so I guess what I'm getting at is that when it comes to our art as Native people, like, who better to talk about it than our own Native people? Who better than to have the same lived experience, to know that the economic disparity is, to know some of those teachings, and even if you weren't raised around teachings, that you still have this importance of what art does for a community on a healing level and a community level. So I guess that would be me answering my own question.
I helped you get
you
into
helped me get there. You helped me get there. So so that question was, what type of skills and education should one have to become an artist professional? Do you have anything that you would include?
I think the things that I would include are that, of course, there's the Western education route, which is definitely helpful to have. It gets your foot in the door. And in recruiting for our team, I think we were really looking for the right fit, the right experiences, and in some cases that doesn't, somebody can have dope professional experiences and be having already demonstrated that they hustle on behalf of the people, and they turn results, and that is just as important, if not more important, than the Western credentials. And so in some cases, I think especially with First Peoples, it's kind of a situational basis, right? A bachelor's degree is not necessary, but you kind of have to talk with the folks that are hiring, right? And so I think there are ways, right? And not outside of First People's Fund too. I think there are ways to do it without Western education, but you just gotta be pretty savvy in navigating those spaces and have a champion, having multiple champions kind of navigating you through those systems.
Yeah. And I feel like, even now, I mean, I can't tell you how many times I've seen like artist residencies or grants for emerging artists, and I was thinking, gosh, we should really develop something for Native art professionals, like some type of workshops to get more people through the door, because that's financial security, that's uh that that's a number of things, that's like building our community together and having our people represent our work, and so anyway, well, that we are almost up for time.
Already?
And yeah, I mean, I sometimes it just goes by really fast.
I feel
And
like I just loosened up. This introvert just finally like took a deep breath and now I'm
I
ready to
know, I know.
play.
Well, I did skip a question.
Okay.
And
Is it
so
a
we
tough
have a
one?
couple more. No, I would say, what are the steps towards filling the gaps of like having and recruiting more Native arts professionals?
Ooh, that's a great one. Um,
And I should know, I don't even know the answer to this one either. Like I like sometimes I'll ask questions that I don't know the answers to,
yeah, I love that.
because then I can get like somebody else's perspective on it.
Yeah, that's it.
Um
It's a really it's a poignant question, and I'll just say, when in doubt, like I always go through like people's networks, like no one knows um, Native artists and Native artist professionals more than like other Native artists and Native artist professionals, and so um, that doesn't answer the question about how to fill in the gaps and experiences and whatnot. But it's not like there's a dearth of Native artists professionals. Like there's probably a dearth of opportunities, right? Of paid opportunities for these kinds of positions. But like there are tons of qualified people to be in these roles. And it's just kind of a matter of asking folks like where they are, like who, hey, we have this position, like who do you know that would be a good fit for this? Whenever I seek out resource or references, like that always works. But like this isn't answering your question though. Like, this isn't
Well,
answering.
I mean, it kind of is, though. It's, saying that there's definitely a need, and there will always be a need, because just like artists, there's always a need for more Native artist representation. And I would say that every generation of Native artists that we get, we also need in equal parts for Native arts representatives or Native arts professionals. And that these are the people that make those connections, and you don't necessarily need to have like a 4-year degree. You don't necessarily need to have your master's. That like because I know other people that are working in similar positions that are just come from their community. They have organizational skills, and they've organized their people together, and they've promoted their own people and promoted their art. So I feel like those are like the sheer basics of it.
Yeah.
And that it's rewarding. It's very rewarding. So if you're listening to this on the MNAA site or the powwows.com site, and you're thinking, gee, what should my next step be in life? Like for a job, consider being a Native artist professional. We don't have very many, and we need more. And I'm sure your community will need you in the long run, and need your dedication, because that's what it really is. It's like a dedication. Like you're so in love with your people and with the art that they create, that's all you want to do is promote, what everything, the art that is about that. And so that is our time. um I'll have to ask you again. Like I'll bring you in for like beaters. Like we'll have a question. We'll have like a thing about beating.
Oh my goodness, I would prefer to be on a panel of beaters because like there's so many beaters that are phenomenal, and yeah, I would not feel comfortable just being by myself on alone talking about my bead work because yes, oh my gosh.
Well, thank you so much, Crystal. This has been so great in thinking about this episode and wanting it to be about Native arts professionals. I'm so glad that you said yes to this because I feel like everything that you said was just on point. And of course, we all love First People's Fun and the stuff that you guys continuously do for our community for a few decades now. And so, and on a national level. So thank you again for being on the Arts Talk and Tea. And everybody stay tuned for our next month. We took a little bit of a break for June. We're coming back July and coming back even stronger for August. So stay tuned for our August Arts Talk and Tea. And don't forget to drink tea and stay hydrated and have a good summer's evening. Dokshta.
Thank you, Graci. Thank you, Ashley. Thank you, Eminem. Mna.